Well, good to see everyone. We're going to look tonight at kind of a deep cut. We're going to look at a woman named Jehosheba, and I don't know. I won't ask you to tell me if you recognize the name when I sent it out this morning. Some of you probably did. Some of you maybe didn't. It's not a name that we see referenced very much, that we talk about very much. It's a story that I remember largely from when I was a kid in Sunday school. I think it's one of those that we maybe talk about in Sunday school more than we talk about as adults. But we're going to look at this woman named Jehosheba, and her story is found in two different texts in the Bible, in the Old Testament. They're very similar, almost identical, although there are a few little differences here and there. But they're very similar in their wording, very similar in the way they tell this story. 2 Kings 11 is the first. Is one location, verses 1 through 16, and then 2 Chronicles 22, starting in probably verse 10 through chapter 23, verse 15. So those are the two places where this story gets told, and I'm going to mostly be looking at 2 Kings 11 just for simplicity's sake. But if you want to look at the Chronicles as well, that's fine. This is one of those stories that requires some backstory. I don't know how well you know the Old Testament, but there was a division in the people of Israel. 10 of the tribes became known as the Northern Kingdom. 2 of the tribes became known as the Southern Kingdom, and they had separate kings. They had separate temples. They had separate priesthoods. They were all Jews. They all traced their ancestry really to a common place. But they all were cognizant of the 10 Commandments and the Exodus and all those events that kind of made the nation of Israel who they were. But they divided into 2 separate kingdoms, sometimes antagonistic kingdoms. So other times there were some alliances, and this is one of those times when there was kind of an alliance, and as in the ancient Near East, the way it often worked, the alliance came through marriage. Maybe you've heard of King Ahab. He was the one who was married to Jezebel, and they had a daughter, or at least he had a daughter, named Athaliah. Athaliah was married to a king from the Southern Kingdom, Jehoram, and in the course of events, Jehoram was killed, executed, and left the kingship in the Southern Kingdom very much up in the air. And Athaliah sort of saw this situation, and since her son, the king, had been killed, 2 Kings 11 begins with Athaliah proceeding to destroy the whole royal family. Now, why would she do this? Why would she wipe out her own royal family?
So she could be queen.
Oh, she could be queen, right? And that's the way things get done in the ancient Near East. Sometimes we have stories like that in the Old Testament quite a bit. In fact, Ahaziah is killed by a usurper of the throne in the Northern Kingdom, Jehu. Jehu executes him and the king in the north at the same time, and that's the reason that Ahaziah, in fact, is killed. And so his mother Athaliah does the same thing in Judah. She purges all of the potential successors to the throne, and she takes charge of the kingdom. There's nobody to question her. There's no one to threaten her. She takes charge of the Southern Kingdom. Except this woman that we're talking about tonight, Jehosheba. Jehosheba was sister of the king who was killed, Ahaziah. So she was part of the royal family. For some reason, Athaliah didn't consider her a threat, perhaps because she was a woman, perhaps because she was married to a priest and Athaliah was afraid to do much to her. In any case, she survives and she takes her little nephew, Joash, Ahaziah's son, and she hides him. He's 1 year old, and she is able to take him away from the royal princes who are about to be murdered, and she hides him and his nurse in a room in the temple. And 2 Kings 11:3 says, he remained hidden with his nurse at the temple of the Lord for 6 years while Athaliah ruled the land. Athaliah being in charge is a problem for a lot of reasons. Why do you think Athaliah being in charge is a problem? Being in charge of the southern kingdom.
Because the other lady was killing all the little boys.
Okay, she certainly is.
And when she hid the other boy when the other lady hid the other boy for 6 years, they took him out on the 7th year and made him king.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what happens.
I'm doing my homework.
Nice going. So why now? Why is it a problem that Athaliah is in charge, reigning over the kingdom? I mean, she was married to the king. Isn't there a claim there somewhere? What's the issue?
Well, the line of kings was at least supposedly chosen by God when it was established that Samuel should anoint Saul as king. And I believe everyone is descended from Saul.
No.
Oh, okay.
Everybody in the southern kingdom is descended from a subsequent king, who you may have heard of, David. But you're right about the fact that the line was supposed to be.
But David got anointed too. So
right. The line was supposed to be David's line. David's descendants were supposed to be on the throne, and that was God had given David that throne and his house that throne. That goes way back to 2 Samuel 7, I believe. And so Athaliah is not of the house of David. She's not even a Jew, actually, fully. Her mother is Jezebel. She's not fully a Jew. And she does seem to have pagan inclinations. She is encouraging Israel to worship other gods, the southern kingdom, when she is in charge. And so this is an issue, right? This is a problem. And this is probably why, one of the reasons at least, why Jehoshaphat takes Joash and hides him. By the way, if I get these names wrong, there's too many that are alike in this story. There's Jehoshaphat, there's Joash, the king before Ahaziah was Jehoram, the king in the northern kingdom was Joram. They all sort of muddle together to me. So if I get one wrong, please excuse me for that. And so that's where we are. That's where we stand. We've got this queen on the throne in the southern kingdom who is not supposed to be on the throne, and she is from what we see in this story, she is leading the southern kingdom into worship of other gods. She's not of the line of David, and so Jehoshaphat decides to do something about this. And what she does is she takes this little guy and she hides him. Comments, questions right now? Thoughts?
I'm not sure why you're saying she's not of the line of David, because she's apparently the daughter either of Ahab or Omri. And so, right, they're in the line of David, so she's in the line of, she can trace her.
Are Ahab and Omri
parentage.
in the line of David? I don't think so. Somebody do some homework on that. I don't think Ahab and Omri are in the line of David. They were northern kings. Omri actually was a usurper, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he killed, executed the king who was, I can't remember who, but executed a king in the northern of the northern tribes. Huh? Zimri. That's right. That was like where they had the 3 kings in about a week and a half there. And so I don't believe that Omri and Ahab would have been of the tribe of Judah, would have been descendants of David. I could be wrong about that. I'll look into that, but I think that's true. Do we know what tribe Ahab was of? I don't know that it's said.
Well,
But-
Wikipedia says she's in the line of David. Or maybe not. Maybe it's Jehoram that's the descendant.
Jehoram is.
It's a little unclear, I guess.
Jehoram is a descendant of David. For sure. Athaliah, I don't think would have been, unless I'm missing something. And that's
Well,
possible.
In any case, she is the daughter of kings of Judah,
Of Israel, kings of Israel.
of Israel. Okay.
She's Ahab's daughter. And we don't know, I don't think we know that Ahab was of the line of David.
Okay.
I believe that's right. If somebody sees something else, let me know, but I think that's correct. Other thoughts, other questions, other comments? So one of the things that strikes me is, as we're reading this story is actually about 2 women, right? It's about Jehosheba who hides little Joash, and it's also about Athaliah. And it's let's try to back up a minute and try to understand, why does Athaliah do what she does? Is it just hunger for power? Why do you think Athaliah, I mean, this is quite a move she makes, right? This is this is drawing a line and jumping over it, right? Why would she do such a thing?
Because someone else would have done it to her.
Because somebody else might have done it to her. I mean, that's certainly one of the possibilities, right? That's got to be on her mind.
It's a reason.
What's that?
It's a reason.
A reason. I mean, she's not in a very solid place, right? She's, anybody who wants some power could prop up a potential claimant to the throne, and she's in trouble. So maybe she's doing unto others before they do unto her, right? Maybe she's making a move here before somebody else does.
Well, with mother named Jezebel, given what Jezebel did, seems like it just sort of runs in the family.
Maybe she learned it from mom, right? I don't know that the text says for sure that she's Jezebel's daughter. It says that that she is Ahab's daughter. I don't think it says she's Jezebel's daughter, but it sure fits, right? I mean, she sure resembles Jezebel in her actions. Jezebel, you remember, decided she wanted a vineyard, so she had the guy killed because he wouldn't sell the vineyard, among other things. So yeah, I mean, there's we kind of look at her and we kind of go, she's this villain bent on evil, and I guess she is, but I think it's worth it to sort of step back and go, all right, she's trying to take control of her world, right? She's trying to take control of circumstances that before they take control of her, and she does a pretty good job of it, a pretty comprehensive job of it, for sure. Jehoshaphat is, in a way, trying to do the same thing. She's trying to take control of the situation. She's trying to take control of her world and help it to make some sense and try to fix what she sees as having gone off the rails. And so, I kind of like the idea that these two women are kind of both trying to influence their world in a way that's pretty atypical for women of the time, I suppose. And in doing so, they sort of show what their values are. So Athaliah makes this move with violence and with conquest and with destruction of anybody who might oppose her. Jehoshaphat does it differently. So let's read a little more. In the 7th year, let's see. We'll read this. Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram and sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the royal princes who were about to be murdered. She put him and his nurse in a bedroom to hide him from Athaliah, so he was not killed. He remained hidden with his nurse at the temple of the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. So it's a long. She's playing a long game, right? Athaliah is making this move now. She wants what she wants now, this minute. Jehoshaphat is going to play this longer game and do it by preserving a son of the king who will continue David's line. In the 7th year, Jehoiada is her son, her husband. Jehoiada is what's that?
Extra literature
Uh,
here.
Josephus says that Jehosheba was married to Jehoiada.
Jehoiada, yes, and actually the text says that too, and I think in 2 Chronicles maybe. Let's see. Yeah, 2 Chronicles 22 verse 11. Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram and wife of the priest Jehoiada, was Ahaziah's sister. So yes, Jehosheba is married to Jehoiada. There's another name that makes this a real easy story for you. The priest. She's married to the priest. So there's a sort of an inn at the temple, right? Hey, hon, you got an extra room there? I could put my little nephew up in for the next 6 years so that he doesn't get murdered. Well, sure. And so she moves him in, and in the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the commanders of units of 100, the Karites and the guards. We don't know exactly what the Karites were, I don't think, and had them brought to him at the temple of the Lord. Temple guard. Later on, we see the temple guard in the New Testament has a very different role of arresting Jesus, for one thing. But in the Old Testament, there is a temple guard that somehow is responsible for sort of preserving order, I suppose, around the temple, around the precincts. And Jehoiada calls all these guards to him and their commanders, and says he made a covenant with them and put them under oath at the temple of the Lord. And then he showed them the king's son. He commanded them, saying, "This is what you're to do. You who are in the 3 companies that are going on duty on the Sabbath, a third of you guarding the royal palace, a third at the sewer gate, and a third at the gate behind the guard. You take turns guarding the temple. And you who are in the other 2 companies that normally go off Sabbath duty are all to guard the temple for the king." So looks like 3 units on and 2 units off on the Sabbath, right? They probably rotate the Sabbaths. And Jehoiada says, no days off this time, no days off this week. Everybody's going to show up, and we're all going to be there to guard the temple. He potentially thinks some problems might arise, right? Station yourselves around the king. He's already calling him a king. Each of you with a weapon in hand. Anyone who approaches your ranks is to be put to death. Stay close to the king wherever he goes. And verse 9 of 2 Kings 11, the commanders did what he said, took their men, came to Jehoiada. He hands out the spears and shields that had belonged to King David, were in the temple of the Lord. And so the guards, all now with weapons in their hands, are stationed around the king. Jehoiada brought out the king's son and put the crown on him. He presented him with a copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. They anointed him, and the people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king." Notice copy of the covenant, right? This is a king that's going to be what we're supposed to do this. This is something that the kings are supposed to receive, this copy of the covenant that God had made with Israel. And so Jehoiada does this, gives him the covenant, so there's no chance that he could just not know about it. And the assumption being that he's going to rule according to this covenant, and they proclaim him king, crown him king, and the people gathered around all shout and celebrate. Comments, thoughts right now? I'm talking a lot.
Was there anything magic about the seventh year? You know, in the Old Testament, the Jews, 7 was kind of a magic number for them. Is there any indication here?
I never really thought about that. I assume it's because, for whatever reason, they feel like 7 is a reasonable age for somebody to be king. I don't. I guess he's 8. Because he was a year old when she put him in hiding. So I guess he's 8. I guess they assume that 1 is too young, but 8 is probably okay. Obviously, he's going to have advisors. Jehoiada, I'm sure, is going to be an important advisor for him. For whatever reason, they decide at this point in time, maybe the 7 years passing, maybe 7 does have that significance that it sometimes has in the Old Testament. It's complete. It's a Sabbath, right? It's a jubilee, the 7th 7-year cycle. So maybe they're thinking of this as sort of a jubilee, the beginning of something new for Israel or for Judah.
Sounds like marketing.
What's that?
Sounds like marketing to me.
Marketing. Well, there's some marketing that happens here, right? I mean, to just roll out the crown and put it on the head of an 8-year-old and say, "Here's the king," and the people go, "Yes," and they celebrate. That's some good marketing has occurred. I think you're right. Spoken like a marketing major. Other thoughts or questions, comments? Please don't be shy. If you have anything to add, please.
So the woman who was killing all of the kids, at some point they're gonna take her outside and kill her outside of the church. Right?
At some point they are going to do that. Yes, that's where we're headed. You're absolutely right. It's one of those things where you go, I sure hope Athaliah is going to get what's coming to her.
Yeah.
So
her son had been killed.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, you were talking about, what are some reasons that somebody might do this? An obvious reason, Ahaziah had been murdered, right?
One of the things that I think about when I see this is, God didn't really want his people to have kings.
Yeah.
And there might have been a clear reason for that.
All through Kings and Chronicles, you just see that over and over again, right? You just kind of go, yeah, this is, God said this would happen. This is something that was always going to, is always going to be there, right? When human beings get some power, what do they often want? They want more power. They want to consolidate their power. They want to hold on to their power. They don't want to give up. We see that in our world. We see that in our time. And we don't even have a monarch, right? And it can be hard for people to let go of power. So that's kind of what's happening here. And we can tend to sort of idealize Jehoshaphat a little bit. And I think Jehoshaphat is the good guy in this, and I think she does do a good thing. But she's sort of playing the same game, right? And we're going to see that coming up. She's biding her time. She's waiting, and she has the virtue, I think, of wanting what it seems that God would want. But she's going about it in some of the same ways, or at least Jehoiada and the temple guards are. King is crowned. Everybody's celebrating except for Athaliah, who's not celebrating. When Athaliah heard the noise made by the guards and the people, she went to the people at the temple of the Lord. She looked, and there was the king standing by the pillar, as the custom was. Exactly what pillar they mean and the custom that he's talking about is a little unclear, but he's doing whatever the king usually does at his coronation, I think is the point of this. They've got it set up, it's marketing. They've got it set up, just like it always is when a king is crowned. And so, so she's looking at a coronation that she didn't get invited to. And so she tears her robes and calls out treason, treason. Tearing your robes, of course, is a mourning kind of thing, a grieving sort of symbol. From her perspective, all these people are rebels. They're all rebelling against her rule. Jehoiada the priest ordered the commanders of units of 100 who were in charge of the troops, bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows. For the priest said she must not be put to death in the temple of the Lord. So they seized her as she reached the place where the horses entered the palace grounds, and there she was put to death. Jehoiada then made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people. They would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people. Just note who the covenants are between, right? There's a covenant that encompasses the king and the Lord and the people, right? This is the covenant God made with Israel. The people are to serve, are to honor me as their God. They'll be my people, and the king is going to rule according to this covenant. But it's interesting also, there is a covenant between the king and the people. And it probably works somewhat the same way, right? You be my people, and I promise I'll be a just king. I'll be a good king. That's the covenant probably that is in view there. Then they all go down to the temple of Baal and tear it down, smash the altars, kill the priest. And they bring then the guards back to the temple. They bring Joash into the palace and install him as king. I like verse 20. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was calm, because Athaliah had been slain with the sword at the palace. I don't know how you feel about putting the priest of Baal to the sword and all the killing that goes on. I mean, that's something we sort of deal with anytime we're in the Old Testament, right? There's a whole lot of murder, and sometimes it's the people we think of as the good guys doing the killing, and sometimes it's the people we think of as the bad guys doing the killing. But there's a whole lot of it happening. And I don't honestly know how to feel about that. I think you feel about that however you should feel about that however you feel. This isn't a Christian way of dealing with power dynamics, and it's not a Christian way of dealing necessarily with these things. Though I wonder what Christians in Ukraine right now are thinking about the place of violence and fighting back and defending themselves and overthrowing corrupt power. I don't know. That'd be a harder conversation to have than sitting here on a comfortable chair in a place where it really isn't urgent for me to think about it. So thoughts. I'm talking a lot again. Thoughts, comments. What do you think of I can't get the names right. What do you think about this story? What do you think about the ways in which this is dealt with, the ways in which people go about sort of trying to control things? What do you think about Jehoshaphat's actions?
It would be nice if the story had a fully happy ending.
Yeah.
And I mean, Jehoash is proves to be one of the good kings, except he doesn't get rid of the high places where worship of idols, Baal, was still going on. It doesn't sound like he approved of it, but he got rid of the priests of Baal in Jerusalem, it sounds like, but not elsewhere. And then it is a little sad, isn't it, that, despite being one of the good guys and apparently doing mainly what God wanted, that doesn't stop him from being murdered.
Yep.
Well, he kind of drifts away, or more than drifts, when this priest Jehoiada dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, he kills the son of Jehoiada.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what Jesus is citing in the New Testament.
Yeah, he kind of goes off the rails when the priest dies, and when Jehoiada dies, who's apparently a pretty important advisor for him, and sort of keeps a check on him. And we aren't told all the circumstances of that, but it sure didn't look good. And there's not, these stories, as we've said, don't always have happy, sunny ending, good guys or the bad guys. And that's life. I mean, that's the way life works sometimes. We all recognize that, I think, that being faithful doesn't mean you're going to avoid hardship and struggle and trouble sometimes, and injustice and sorrow, and being unfaithful doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get what's coming to you necessarily, at least in this life. And we sort of recognize that, I think, and have to sort of figure out how do we make room in our faith for that, and make room in our faith for those kinds of actions. Jehoshaphat, the thing I like about Jehoshaphat, I think, is she does what she can do to make a difference right when she can. I mean, she can't save her brother. She can't change the fact that Athaliah has wiped out most of the rest of the family and has taken control. But it's, I can do this one thing. I can do, and that she sort of reminds me of Esther a little bit. I can do this one thing. I can use the opportunity I have here to preserve something for the future, right? To preserve some sort of spark, some sort of hope. And I think that's, I think that's admirable that she does that. I mean, how easy would it have been, right, for her to just say, I can't do anything about it. Let's just go about our lives. Let's just do the things that we do. And she puts herself at some risk, I suppose.
What impressed me, this is probably a risk of her life.
Yeah, I would have
If
guessed.
Athaliah gets wind of this, she's going to go and along with the boy.
I would guess. I mean, I can't imagine now why Athaliah doesn't target her in the first place. I'm not sure about, but I think certainly she would have been a target if she had found out what was, who was in that temple back room, and maybe it was fortunate that she was more inclined toward Baal, because maybe she didn't spend much time in the temple of the Lord, and so she didn't hear a baby crying in the back room.
The parallel that occurred to me was the Dutch resistance. Dutch Christians, mainly Dutch Christians, who hid Jews, and other people in Europe who hid Jews. Because, as Alan points out, a good argument could be made, well, the government is doing this, and, I should just go with what, but no, there was a recognition that I need to intervene and help and hide these people. It's really quite a strong parallel. And people were inspired to do that, even though at danger of their own lives, and even though it was clearly illegal to do.
I think that's a really interesting parallel. Yes, the hiding place. The book The Hiding Place talks about talks about some of that, and the Diary of Anne Frank talks about some of that. The people who Schindler's List, I'm sure you've seen that. The people who at a time where it was not advantageous to them chose to do some difficult things because it was right and it was what ought to be done, and it perhaps would save something. Not everybody, not everything, but it would save something. And I think that's admirable, and I appreciate that about this story. That the contrast between Athaliah and the way she goes about taking care of herself and holding on to power, and the way Jehoshaphat goes about it, and how now at some point the swords still get swung, right? The spears get whatever spears do, but there's this long view where I'm going to be faithful right now, and I'm going to try to preserve this dynasty, preserve this line of David, because that mattered. And I don't even know, the text doesn't even say how much the line of David so much mattered to her, and that's kind of interesting too. We don't know much about her. She's one of these characters in the Bible that you can kind of paint on her whatever you want to paint on her, right? I don't know. I don't know how much the line of David meant. I don't know. I mean, this was her family, and maybe that's what she was more concerned about. Either way, God uses her in this set of circumstances, and we've talked about this before, and how much was God, whose side was God on, and it's hard to be, to make pronouncements about that. But we know that Jesus came through the line of David. We know that.
Whether she knew that how important it was or not, God knew.
Yes.
He put her in the right place to accomplish it.
I guess that's kind of my point. Yeah, that maybe she didn't know, maybe she knew, maybe she didn't know. Maybe the line of David mattered to her. Maybe preserving a remnant of her family mattered to her. Maybe she just didn't like Athaliah. I don't know the answer to that question, but God.
In fairness, the story, I think, I've just read it briefly a couple times, but I think the story, she wanted to hide her nephew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's her husband who then decides he's going to put the nephew back on the throne. If we want to be stereotypical, it's her desire is just for, to preserve this young boy's life, and his nurse, by the way, which is interesting, right? Maybe he was still being weaned at that point, hadn't been weaned yet. I don't know, but
yeah,
the nurse gets saves too. And then it's the men who later, according to the story, decide they're going to, use this to an advantage. But I don't know that we can attribute some great future political movement planning to her, but it ends up sort of falling out that way between her and her husband, as to what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly
interesting. Of course, if you want to hide something from Athaliah, put it in the temple, right? She's never going to find it, right?
She doesn't hang out there much. So yeah, hide him in the temple. But as Christians, I can't help but read it and think about the fact that Jesus comes through the line of David, and in this instance, the line of David is protected. And I suppose God could create descendants of David out of the stones, right? but as the way human beings and the way our little worlds sort of work, and sometimes we don't see the bigger picture, but in this, we look back and we can see sort of a line back through. But
the twist is, of course, too, that Jesus is also a descendant of Athaliah, which is odd, just like he's a descendant of Rahab and of, some of
Athaliah's,
well, if this is her grandson, right?
oh, I
So
guess.
Jesus,
I guess.
Jesus has,
Yeah.
she,
Okay, yeah.
she's a great, somewhere in there. I mean, if you sketch it out.
I suppose if she is, but, and I never know, okay, so we know that, let me get the names right. We know that.
The genealogies show that Athaliah is sort of the bridge between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And after Athaliah, all of the kings in the southern kingdom are, in a sense, a descendant of a lot of the kings of Israel too, because Athaliah,
Assuming that Ahab probably had more than one wife, right?
Well, but regardless, this is Athaliah's grandson.
Yeah.
So if Jesus is descended from the grandson, he's
Yes.
descended from her.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's right. She is Ahaziah's mother. We know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's descendant, Ron? What
was that?
descendant mean?
A child of, or a descendant of somebody who comes through the family line of this person. Josh is one of the descendants. He's my only descendant, in fact.
Okay.
One of the things that this isn't like a lesson or anything, but it just occurred to me as I was reading this, is they don't give the guards the Sabbath apparently off. But my study Bible says that the guards were actually not Jewish. I don't know if that's right or not.
Is that what the Karaites, is that
That's
Yeah.
what they're the,
for?
that David chose.
Right. Yes.
That's what it.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that, but that's right. Yeah.
Like
David did that
mercenaries.
probably for very much for that reason, right? You can have some guys on duty on the Sabbath, and they don't violate it because they're not Jews. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that, but that's right. David did set something like that up. I sort of looked at Karaites and just said, I don't know what that is, and skipped over it. But yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Good catch there. Other thoughts? Well, thanks very much for your comments, and as usual, always enjoy hearing what you think of these texts. And if there's a woman of the Bible that we haven't looked at that you would like to, please feel free to let me know. One of your heroes. I've sort of tried to mix in some familiar ones with some unfamiliar ones. But I don't want to necessarily, I don't know that I would get to some of the more familiar ones, but if you'd like me to, let me know and be glad to talk about it.
It's interesting that it says this woman stole him away from among the king's sons. I mean, there may be more of a story in that, in addition to just watching over.
I would like to know, I mean, if I'm making this movie, that's an important part of the movie, how she gets him out of wherever they are, yeah, being held to, and I'd probably make it good. I'd make it like I don't know, like a Mission Impossible kind of thing where she comes down on a rope or something.
But I mean, she's the one that did it.
Yeah.
None of these other people did it. Maybe they, sat on their hands, and she's the one that took the initiative.
Yeah.
Patrick, had you chosen who you want to talk about next week?
I have not. You have a thought? I keep thinking about Miriam. I kind of like to do something on Miriam. So I might be Miriam next week unless somebody has another thought.
Are you saying Miriam or Mary?
Miriam,
She's a good one.
Moses, Moses' sister. All right, good to see everybody. Hope
Good night,
you're still-
guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.